The starship appeared first as a small dot in the sky above the alien capital, but soon it grew larger, casting a long shadow across the sparkling towers and crystal streets. Citizens paused in the streets, pointing upward, whispers filling the air. The massive craft had a design unlike any the planet had ever seen: sleek curves, bright lights that shifted color, and engines that hummed with a low, steady vibration. The alien queen, seated upon her throne in the grand palace, heard the news before anyone else. Her eyes narrowed, and her long, pale fingers tightened around the arms of her chair. "Report!" she demanded. Her voice carried across the throne room, and her advisors hurried forward, moving with the careful precision that centuries of court etiquette required. "Your Majesty," one of them said, bowing low, "a starship approaches the palace. It is large and of unknown origin. It bears no insignia of our allies or our known enemies." She knew in the depth of her being who was aboard. Her daughter, Lyra, had not returned in decades, leaving the court and the throne in shock. Rumors of her life among humans had swirled through the galaxy, but the queen had never believed them until now. "Prepare the welcome carefully," she said, her voice calm but heavy with tension, "and keep all defenses ready. I want no surprises." Behind Lyra walked a tall man with a steady, confident gait, clearly human in appearance. And following him, holding each of their hands, were two children. Their forms were a curious mix of alien elegance and human familiarity. The queen rose from her throne, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. Courtiers gasped, some whispering that humans were dangerous, that this could be a trick. But the queen's heart knew better. This was her daughter returning after all the years, with a life she had never imagined. Lyra approached the throne slowly, bowing her head in respect, though her eyes never left her mother's. "Mother," she said, her voice steady, "I have come home." "They are your grandchildren," she gestured to the human man. "This is Ethan, my husband. Together we have raised them with both human and alien traditions. We wish to introduce them to you, to the court, to our world." The idea of humans walking freely among them, let alone being related to the royal line, seemed impossible. Yet here they were, standing proudly, unafraid. The queen stepped forward slowly, her long robes brushing against the marble floor. She studied her grandchildren, noticing small details: the curve of their ears, the color of their eyes, the tiny gestures they had inherited from humans. They were not the perfect replicas of alien royalty she had imagined, yet something about them was striking. There was courage, a spark of life that felt both foreign and familiar. Lyra continued, her voice calm and strong. "I know this may be difficult for you to understand, Mother. I know humans are different from us, but they are not weak. Ethan is brave, loyal, and kind. Our children, they are strong in ways you may not yet see." For decades, she had ruled this world with wisdom and caution, yet the strongest emotion now was something she had not felt in years: hope. Ethan stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Your Majesty, I mean no harm. I wish only to be a part of this world, to honor your family and traditions. I know I am not of your species, but I have learned to respect all that you have built here. We are here to share, not to conquer. Any misstep, and you will answer not just to me, but to the court." They had traveled across the stars, faced dangers their mother would not yet speak of, and adapted to life in ways that would amaze even the most seasoned alien citizens. As the family was led to quarters prepared for them, whispers traveled through the court like wildfire. "Humans among us in the palace," some said. Others murmured, "Perhaps they are not as weak as we thought." The queen allowed herself a small smile, noting the mixed reactions. The first step toward understanding was never easy. Days passed. The children explored the palace gardens, their laughter echoing across the marble corridors. The queen watched from a balcony as Kale experimented with alien plants, carefully adjusting their growth with energy techniques he had learned from both his mother and father. Laurel followed a hummingbird-like creature, laughing as it darted between flowers. The queen realized she had not seen life quite like this in her court before. Humans brought an energy that was different, spontaneous, unpredictable, yet remarkably intelligent. They did not challenge authority in the ways the queen had feared. Instead, they brought new perspectives, problem-solving skills, and a bravery that the rigid traditions of the court sometimes lacked. One evening, the queen invited Lyra and Ethan to dine with her privately. The room was vast, with high ceilings and walls etched with history. "Tell me," the queen said, "why did you return now after all these years? I want them to know you, and I want you to know them." The court had scorned her choice at the time, yet now she saw the strength it had taken. Strength not just of will, but of heart. Very well, she said softly. We shall see what the future brings, but understand this, my court is wary, many will watch you, study you, and test you. And whatever they challenge, we will face it together. For the first time in decades, the queen felt a sense of possibility. Perhaps the future was not just about maintaining traditions or guarding against threats. Perhaps the future was about growth, learning, and unity, lessons she had thought only humans could teach. As night fell and the twin moons rose over the palace, the queen returned to her chambers. She could still hear the laughter of her grandchildren echoing through the halls. A small smile crossed her face, and she whispered, "Yes, these are my grandchildren." The first day had passed, and though uncertainty remained, hope had taken root. Above all, the queen realized something profound. The galaxy was changing, and so was her family. And if humans could survive among her people, perhaps they could help her people survive, too. The first step toward a new era had begun, and it began with her daughter, her human son-in-law, and the two remarkable children who were, in every sense, her grandchildren. And so, in the quiet of the palace, under the alien stars, a family reunited. The queen sat in contemplation, knowing that the challenges ahead would be great, but the possibilities endless. The palace had never seen such a lively scene. The human husband, Ethan, walked through the grand halls with careful steps, learning to adjust to the strange architecture and alien norms. His eyes wandered to the high ceilings, the crystal chandeliers that reflected light in thousands of patterns, and the walls adorned with symbols of history and power. To him, everything was beautiful, but it was also intimidating. Every step reminded him that he was a guest in a world where he was, in many ways, an outsider. Lyra walked beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She knew the court better than anyone and could sense the tension in the air. The courtiers whispered behind their fans, their eyes darting to Ethan and then to the children. "Can humans really understand our ways?" some asked. Others muttered, "Are they dangerous?" Cale knelt beside a glowing plant, his small hands hovering just above its surface. He concentrated, and the plant shivered as it bent toward him. It was a skill that he had inherited from his mother's side, a delicate control over alien energy that allowed him to interact with living things. Laurel chased after a small winged creature, her laughter echoing in the garden. She tried to mimic its movements, stretching her arms like wings. Humans had no natural energy abilities like this, but she had learned to combine observation with instinct, moving with grace. The queen observed from the balcony, a mix of pride and worry in her heart. She had watched her daughter grow up strong and brave, but seeing her grandchildren already displaying unique talents brought a new weight of responsibility. This was a new generation, part human, part alien, and their presence challenged the very traditions she had upheld for centuries. Ethan approached her, bowing slightly. "Your Majesty, I wish only to learn," he said. "If I fail in any custom or tradition, I hope you will guide me." The queen had assigned a court tutor to teach the children about the history and culture of their alien lineage. Cale listened attentively, asking questions that revealed a sharp mind. Laurel sometimes struggled to remember all the complex ceremonies, but she compensated with intuition and creativity, finding ways to simplify rituals without losing their meaning. At the same time, Ethan worked alongside palace engineers, introducing ideas from human technology that complemented alien methods. He demonstrated ways to improve energy efficiency in the palace, combining human ingenuity with alien energy manipulation. Some of the court officials frowned at first, wary of these strange ideas, but others began to nod with approval as the improvements became clear. One morning, Cale ran to his mother, eyes wide. "Mother, there's a small creature trapped in the garden fountain. I tried to help, but it's too fast. Let's see what we can do together." She guided him carefully, showing him how to use his energy control gently to guide the creature to safety. Laurel joined, watching and learning. In minutes, the tiny being was free, darting into the garden with a happy chirp. The queen, watching from the balcony, allowed herself a small, quiet smile. Even in these simple acts, she could see the children's intelligence, bravery, and compassion. They were growing into beings that could unite both human and alien worlds in ways no one had imagined. However, not all members of the court were pleased. Some nobles gathered in private chambers, whispering and plotting. "Humans cannot be trusted," one said. "They do not belong here, and their children may disrupt the line of succession. We must watch them carefully." Still, a shadow of caution hung over the palace, and she made sure her guards were vigilant. One afternoon, while exploring a part of the palace rarely visited by guests, Ethan stumbled upon an old training hall. Its walls were etched with symbols representing centuries of martial skill, energy techniques, and strategic thinking. He turned to Lyra, excitement in his eyes. "This could help the children develop their abilities further," he said. Lyra nodded. "They need to understand not just the control of their powers, but how to use them responsibly. Let's start today." Laurel's eyes widened as she saw the glowing inscriptions on the walls, each one telling a story of past heroes. Ethan guided them through basic movements, showing how to focus energy with precision, while Lyra taught them to combine their natural abilities with strategic thinking. The children learned quickly, their mixed heritage giving them an unusual flexibility. Kale's movements were precise and deliberate like an alien scholar, while Laurel's improvisations reflected human creativity. Word of their progress spread through the palace. Courtiers who had doubted them began to watch with interest. A small group approached the queen, murmuring, "Your Majesty, perhaps the humans and their children are more capable than we thought," one said cautiously. The queen nodded. "Watch, but do not interfere. Let them prove themselves, as all members of this court must." Rumors spread quickly, and the palace received messages both of welcome and of concern from allied worlds. One evening, a sudden alert sounded in the palace. A patrol had spotted unusual movement near the palace gates. The queen's heart raced. Could it be a threat to the children? She summoned Ethan and Lyra. "Stay close to the children," she instructed. "We do not yet know the intent of these visitors." "You've trained for this," she said gently. "Remember your lessons." Together, they repelled the intruders without injury, their coordination surprising even the queen's most experienced guards. When the battle ended, the queen approached her daughter and grandchildren. "You have proven yourselves," she said. "Perhaps humans are not only capable but necessary. There is much we can learn from your ways." "That is my promise." They also learned more advanced energy techniques under Ethan's guidance, blending human ingenuity with alien tradition. Ethan, too, adapted quickly. He learned the importance of ritual, the value of observation, and the need for patience in a world where impulsive action could have dire consequences. He often laughed quietly at the intricate ceremonies, but he also admired the discipline that had allowed the alien kingdom to endure for centuries. One day, the queen observed a small, informal scene in the gardens. Kale was teaching a young noble child to focus energy gently, while Laurel encouraged a small group of palace servants to solve a puzzle involving light manipulation. Their actions were subtle, yet they were already changing minds, softening prejudices, and inspiring curiosity. The queen realized that her initial doubts about humans had been misplaced. Their presence was not a threat, it was an opportunity. Opportunity to grow, to innovate, and to strengthen the kingdom. Perhaps, she thought, the future was not in guarding tradition alone, but in embracing the new, the different, and the hybrid. That evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, the family gathered for dinner. Laughter filled the halls, stories were shared, and even the queen allowed herself to smile. For the first time in many years, the palace felt alive in a way that went beyond ceremony and duty. The queen looked at her grandchildren, seeing both the past and the future in their eyes. The galaxy was vast, and dangers would come. But perhaps, with humans by her side, she could face them with courage, wisdom, and hope. The palace was quiet in the early hours of the morning, but a sense of unease lingered in the air. The queen had sensed it the night before, the faint stirrings of discontent among the nobles who still doubted the humans. Though the children and their father had proven themselves capable, whispers of fear and suspicion continued to ripple through the court. Some questioned whether humans could be trusted, whether their presence might one day threaten the throne. Lyra awoke before sunrise, her senses alert. She had grown accustomed to the alien rhythms of the palace, but this morning felt different. A shiver of warning ran through her. She touched Ethan's arm gently. "Something is wrong," she whispered. Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Do you think it's the nobles or something else?" "But I need to check on the children." By the time the first light of the twin suns touched the palace walls, Lyra and Ethan had gathered the children and moved them to a hidden observation room. From there, they could watch the palace grounds without being seen. Soon, movement appeared on the outer perimeter of the palace. Shadows shifted among the tall walls, figures moving with precision and purpose. Lyra's heart tightened. These were not ordinary intruders. They were trained, disciplined, and intent on testing the palace's defenses. "Who are they?" Kale asked quietly, his eyes wide but alert. Enemies, Lyra said simply, but we will handle this together. Remember your training. They want to see how strong the palace is before attempting anything more serious. We need to stop them quietly, without alerting the entire court just yet. Palace guards moved to intercept, but Lyra and Ethan had already activated hidden defenses. Small energy barriers rose from the ground, surprising the attackers and forcing them to halt. Kale concentrated, directing a pulse of energy to reinforce the barriers. Laurel followed, using her agility and keen observation to anticipate the attackers' movements and guide the children's defensive maneuvers. Despite their youth, the children worked with precision. Their combined human creativity and alien skill made them unpredictable. The intruders faltered, their careful plans unraveling. Ethan moved among the barriers, using devices he had built from human technology, enhancing the palace's defenses and creating traps that led the intruders away from sensitive areas. The Queen, observing from her chambers, watched silently. She had expected humans to struggle in such a complex environment, but instead she saw bravery, intelligence, and unity. The children were not simply surviving, they were excelling. Minutes passed like hours. The intruders, realizing that the palace was prepared, attempted to retreat, but Kale and Laurel anticipated their moves, cutting off escape routes with careful precision. Lyra and Ethan coordinated with palace guards, ensuring that no harm came to the children while keeping the intruders contained. Finally, the attackers withdrew entirely, defeated not by brute force but by strategy, cooperation, and unexpected ingenuity. The palace grounds were quiet again, the danger gone for now. The Queen entered the observation room without a word, her presence commanding attention. She looked at the family before her, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. "You have proven yourselves today," she said. "Not just capable, but wise and courageous. Humans, perhaps you are stronger than I imagined. There are others who will not see your actions as proof of worth. Some will see only your differences. You must remain vigilant." The children were taught not only alien history and tradition, but also strategy and defense. Kale learned to focus his energy into protective shields, while Laurel developed the ability to read patterns and predict movements, a skill that combined her human logic with the alien awareness of her heritage. The Queen observed them quietly, often from a distance. She began to see that the presence of humans in the palace was not a disruption, but an evolution. The children's abilities were a reminder that strength could come from cooperation and innovation, not just tradition and rigidity. The court slowly began to change as well. Nobles who had doubted the family watched with curiosity, some even showing respect. A few approached to observe the children's training, asking questions and learning techniques they had never considered. Even the guards, who had initially been skeptical, acknowledged the effectiveness of the new strategies. But not all factions were pacified. Some nobles met in secret, their whispers growing more urgent. "The humans cannot be allowed to influence the throne," one said. "They are outsiders. Their children may disrupt our order." "We cannot fear them," she told Ethan. "We must prepare, yes, but we must also continue to teach the children strength, courage, and wisdom. But together, they can overcome anything." Kale executed a precise energy shield, catching an object before it fell. Laurel predicted its trajectory, redirecting it safely. The display of skill, strategy, and calm control left the observers in awe. For a moment, the tension between human and alien melted, replaced by admiration. The Queen, who had been watching from a balcony above, nodded approvingly. This was not just training, it was diplomacy, leadership, and education in action. The children were teaching the court as much as they were learning. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A rival faction on a distant moon had begun mobilizing forces, sending scouts toward the palace's sector. The Queen's face hardened. This was no longer a small threat. It was a test of everything the family had learned. Lyra looked at her children, who were now alert and ready. "Kale, Laurel, this will be your first true challenge," she said. "Remember your training. Remember what you have learned about strategy, focus, and courage." Laurel clenched her fists, ready to face whatever came. Ethan placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "We will face this together. Whatever happens, the family stands united. And know this, courage, intelligence, and unity will be your greatest weapons." As Kale and Laurel lay in bed, they whispered to each other. "We can do this," Kale said. "Yes," Laurel replied. "We just have to remember what Mother and Father taught us and trust each other." The distant scouts were approaching, but she was no longer afraid. She had seen the courage of humans, the strength of hybrid children, and the wisdom of a daughter who had learned to balance both worlds. The future of the palace, and perhaps the galaxy, was about to be tested. And for the first time, the queen believed that her family, human and alien alike, could face whatever threats came with courage, intelligence, and unity. The palace was alive with a different kind of energy now, one of curiosity, learning, and cautious optimism. The minor skirmish from the previous days had passed, but its impact lingered. Guards and courtiers spoke quietly among themselves, often glancing at the human family with a mixture of respect and wonder. Even the most skeptical nobles had begun to notice something remarkable. The humans were not merely surviving in an alien world, they were thriving. Lyra guided the children through the palace halls, showing them small details that many court members overlooked. "Notice the patterns on the walls," she said, pointing to delicate carvings that told the history of her people. "Each symbol represents a story, a lesson from the past. Understanding them is as important as any battle skill." "Yes," Lyra said, smiling. "And one day you will create your own marks, your own stories, ones that reflect both worlds, human and alien." "You both have great potential," he said. "But remember, strength isn't just about energy or skill. It's about understanding, compassion, and strategy. That is what makes heroes in any world." For years, she had ruled with discipline, intelligence, and caution, but what she saw now challenged every assumption she had held. These humans, and the hybrid children, brought vitality, creativity, and a new kind of courage that could not be measured by tradition alone. She decided to invite the family to her private chambers for a conversation. When they entered, the queen's expression was serious, but her eyes were softer than usual. "You have done well in the past days," she said. "You have shown courage, skill, and wisdom, but I am aware that your presence is not welcomed by all. Some nobles continue to oppose you, some fear what they do not understand. Change is never easy, especially in a court that has existed for centuries. We are not here to disrupt, but to show that there is strength in unity. Perhaps this is a lesson I must embrace." Lyra taught the children about diplomacy, showing them how to read expressions, interpret tone, and understand the subtle cues of alien communication. "Words are powerful," she said, "but actions speak louder. Remember that in this palace, understanding both is crucial." Laurel, meanwhile, combined her observations with instinct, predicting outcomes and suggesting solutions that even the older nobles had not considered. Ethan joined in as well, introducing simple human practices that encouraged teamwork and empathy. He organized exercises in which the children had to solve problems together, combining human ingenuity with alien abilities. The exercises were small but effective, showing the court that cooperation could yield results that tradition alone could not. One afternoon, the queen observed a scene in the gardens that made her heart swell. Kale and Lura were teaching a small group of young nobles how to combine energy skills with problem-solving. The nobles, initially skeptical, were laughing and learning eagerly. Even the guards who watched from the edges seemed surprised at the children's patience, intelligence, and leadership. The queen stepped down from her balcony, approaching the group quietly. "What you are doing," she said, her voice calm but firm, "is more important than any battle you may fight. Teaching, guiding, and showing courage in thought as well as action is what will shape the future of this palace. And it gives me hope. We cannot ignore them," she told Ethan. "They will attempt to create conflict. We must be ready, but we must also be cautious. Their goal is not battle alone, it is to sow doubt and fear. We must guide them, not expose them to unnecessary danger. I have lived among humans for many years," she said. "I have learned their ways, their strength, and their values. My children inherit both our worlds, and they bring lessons from both. Cooperation, understanding, and courage can make us stronger, not weaker." He spoke of energy efficiency, problem-solving, and creative strategies that could strengthen the kingdom without compromising tradition. Kale and Laurel stepped forward, demonstrating a small but effective energy exercise that combined strategy, observation, and careful control. The demonstration was flawless. Even the most skeptical nobles could not hide their astonishment. The queen spoke last. "This is not simply about humans or aliens. It is about learning, growing, and preparing for a future that none of us can predict. We must embrace what is capable and brave, not fear it." It was not forced acceptance. It was recognition that the humans and their children were not a threat, but an asset. Over the next several days, Lyra took the children on walks through areas of the palace that had previously been off-limits. She explained the stories behind each room, the history of the royal line, and the responsibilities that came with influence and power. "These halls have seen triumph and failure," she said. "Your actions, your choices will one day be part of that story." The queen observed from afar, quietly noting the way the children carried themselves. Their confidence was growing, but it was tempered with respect and humility. They were learning quickly, but they were also teaching the court how to view humans differently. One evening, after a long day of lessons, the queen summoned the family for a private dinner. The table was set with the finest foods of the palace, and the atmosphere was calm but serious. "You have done well," the queen said. "But remember, there are always those who resist change. Some will attempt to undermine you to create doubt. You must remain vigilant, and you must continue to show courage, intelligence, and patience. We will continue to teach, to learn, and to demonstrate the value of our unity. Not only your abilities, but your hearts. You have the power to change minds, inspire respect, and shape the future. That is more important than any battle." The humans were no longer outsiders. They were becoming part of the kingdom's story, weaving themselves into its history and its future. As night fell, the twin moons casting silver light across the palace gardens, Kale and Lurel played quietly, their laughter mingling with the soft rustle of alien trees. Lyra and Ethan watched, their hearts filled with pride and hope. Even the queen, standing nearby, allowed herself to feel joy and optimism. The palace had seen conflict, doubt, and fear. But now it was witnessing something new: understanding, cooperation, and the beginning of a future where humans and aliens could walk together, learning from each other, protecting each other, and creating a world stronger than either could imagine alone. And for the first time in many years, the queen truly believed that her family, human, alien, and hybrid, was ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold, united in courage, wisdom, and heart. The day had come that the palace had been quietly preparing for. News had arrived from distant sectors. A coalition of planets, previously skeptical of humans, had been observing the palace's recent events. Word of the hybrid children's abilities, the humans' courage, and the family's intelligence had spread across the galaxy. Some welcomed the changes, others remained cautious. The queen knew that now was the moment to solidify the unity she had begun to see take root within her walls. The palace was decorated in a way that had not been seen for centuries. Silver banners reflected the twin suns, and the streets leading to the palace gates were lined with citizens eager to witness the ceremony. Many had traveled from distant regions, curious to see the humans who had entered the royal line and the hybrid children who had already demonstrated extraordinary skill and wisdom. Lyra stood beside Ethan, holding Kale's hand, while Lurel skipped beside them, her eyes wide with excitement. They were dressed in simple garments that reflected both human practicality and alien elegance. They were ready to step forward, not as outsiders, but as a part of the kingdom's story. The queen appeared on the main balcony, her presence commanding and regal, yet softer than usual. She had thought for long hours about what she would say and do. The court was gathered, nobles from every corner of the planet sitting in their traditional places, some with doubt still in their eyes, others with admiration. The queen raised her hand, and silence fell across the grand plaza. "Today is not a day of conquest," she began, her voice strong yet calm. "It is not a day of challenge. Today is a day of recognition, of understanding, and of the future. Yet in all this time, I have learned a lesson that I did not expect. Strength does not come from isolation alone. Strength comes from courage, intelligence, and the willingness to embrace change when it is wise." The children stood tall, understanding that this moment was larger than themselves. It was a turning point for the entire kingdom. The queen continued, her gaze sweeping the crowd. "These humans, Ethan, my daughter Lyra's husband, and their children, Kale and Lurel, have shown courage, intelligence, and wisdom. They have demonstrated that humanity is not weak. They have taught us that adaptability, empathy, and collaboration can strengthen even the oldest of kingdoms. And so, today, I formally recognize them as part of the royal line." Kale and Lurel stepped forward, their young faces bright with pride and understanding. The queen spoke to them directly, her voice softer now. "You are my grandchildren. You carry not only the blood of our people, but the spirit of humanity. You represent the potential of unity, the strength that comes when different worlds come together. Remember this always: courage and wisdom are your guides, and your hearts will lead the way." We will show everyone that humans and aliens can help each other, and that together we can do great things. One where humans and aliens stand side by side, learning from each other, protecting each other, and shaping a future that is brighter than we could imagine alone. Their energy, determination, and optimism filled her with hope. In the weeks that followed, the family's presence continued to strengthen the palace and its people. Kale and Laurel were no longer just children. They were leaders in their own right, guiding younger nobles, teaching lessons about cooperation, and demonstrating that courage could take many forms. Lyra continued her role as a bridge between the human and alien worlds, teaching diplomacy, compassion, and understanding. She guided discussions in the court, showing that human reasoning and alien wisdom could work together to solve complex issues. Ethan's contributions also became invaluable. He introduced new methods of energy management, innovative problem-solving strategies, and practical ideas that blended human innovation with alien tradition. His calm, methodical approach earned him respect even among the most skeptical nobles. The queen observed all of this quietly, her heart filled with pride and relief. She had been cautious, even fearful at first, of humans and their influence. Now, she could see clearly that their presence was a gift. They brought not only new skills but new perspectives, reminding her that growth and progress often came from unexpected places. One afternoon, the queen called the family to the palace gardens, where Kale and Laurel had been practicing energy control and problem-solving exercises with a group of young nobles. She watched as the children guided their peers, correcting mistakes gently, encouraging creativity and celebrating successes. "You have done well," the queen said, approaching them. "You are teaching more than skills. You are teaching courage, cooperation, and understanding. This is the foundation of leadership, and I see in both of you a bright future. That means we're helping them understand each other. Never forget that." The citizens watching from the streets below began to understand what the queen had said. The humans were not a threat. They were a bridge to a stronger, wiser, and more courageous future. The children, young as they were, had shown that unity could overcome fear, that intelligence and empathy could change even the oldest traditions. In the quiet of the palace chambers that evening, the queen spoke privately to Lyra. "You have made choices that I did not understand at first, but I see now that you were right. Humans are capable, and your children, they are remarkable. They bring hope, courage, and strength to our people. We could not have done it without your guidance and trust. One where fear does not rule, and where courage, intelligence, and unity guide our way." They were symbols of a new era, a bridge between worlds. Days passed and the palace flourished. Humans and aliens worked side by side in the courts, in the gardens, and in the halls of learning. Ideas were exchanged, strategies debated, and friendships formed across species and traditions. The queen observed quietly, allowing the family space to continue their influence, confident that they were shaping a future that would endure. One afternoon, as the sun set and bathed the palace in golden light, Kale and Laurel stood on a balcony with their parents and the queen. They looked out over the city, over the towers and streets filled with life, movement, and hope. Kale turned to his grandmother. "We will continue to learn and help, grandmother. That is our promise. And now you will continue to shape it, with courage, wisdom, and heart." The queen whispered quietly, almost to herself, "Yes, this is the future I have hoped for." The hybrid children, symbols of hope and strength, would continue to inspire generations to come. The palace, under twin moons and twin suns, stood as a testament to change, growth, and the power of unity. And the queen, her daughter, her human son-in-law, and her grandchildren looked toward the stars, knowing that together they could face any challenge that the galaxy would bring.